Then she turned aside in confusion, but with an effort she said, "You are supposed to be my fiancé, and you've just come back from France, and oh, what are you thinking of me? Please, please," she broke off. Very gravely and with smiling eyes he replied, "I quite understand. Please don't worry. Something has happened, and if I can do anything to help, you have only to tell me. My name is Bowen, and I'm just back from France." "Are you a major?" enquired Patricia, to whom stars and crowns meant nothing. "I'm afraid I'm a lieutenant colonel," he replied, "on the staff." "Oh, what a pity," said Patricia. "I said you were a major." "Couldn't you say I've been promoted?" Patricia clapped her hands. "Oh, how splendid! Of course. You see, I said that you were Major Brown. I can easily tell them that they misunderstood and that it was Major Bowen. They're such awful cats, and if they found out I should have to leave. You see, that's some of them at the next table there. That's Miss Wangle with the lorgnettes, and the other woman is Mrs. Mosscrop Smythe, who is her echo, and the man is Mr. Bolton. He's nothing in particular." "I see," said Bowen. And of course you've got to pretend to be most awfully glad to see me. You see, we haven't met for a long time, and we're engaged." "I quite understand," was the reply. Then suddenly Patricia caught his eye and saw the smile in it. "Oh, how dreadful!" she cried. "Of course you don't know anything about it. I'm talking like a schoolgirl. You see, my name's Patricia, Patricia Brent." And then she plunged into the whole story, telling him frankly of her escapade. He was strangely easy to talk to. And, she concluded, "what do you think of me?" "I think I'd sooner not tell you just now," he smiled. "Is it as bad as that?" she inquired. Then suddenly the smile faded from his face, and he leaned across to her, saying, "Miss Brent." "I'm afraid you must call me Patricia," she interrupted with a comical look, "in case they overhear. It seems rather sudden, doesn't it? And I shall have to call you—" "Peter," he said. He had nice eyes, Patricia decided. Peter." She made a dash at the name. Bowen sat back in his chair and laughed. Miss Wangle fixed upon him a stare through her lorgnettes, not an unfavourable stare. She was greatly impressed by his rank and red tabs. After that the ice seemed broken, and Patricia and her fiancé chatted merrily together, greatly impressing Patricia's fellow boarders. Bowen was a good talker and a sympathetic listener, and, above all, his attitude had in it that deference which put Patricia entirely at her ease. She told him all there was to tell about herself, and he, in return, explained that he came of an army family, and had been sent out to France soon after Mons. He was then a captain in the yeomanry. He was wounded, promoted, and later received the D.S.O. and M.C. He had now been brought back to England and attached to the General Staff. "Now I think you know all that is necessary to know about your fiancé," he had concluded. Patricia laughed. "Oh, by the way," she said, "you've never given me an engagement ring. Please don't forget that. They asked me where my ring was, and I told them I didn't care about rings, as they were badges of servitude. You see, it is quite possible that Miss Wangle will come over to us presently. She's just that sort, and she might ask awkward questions. That is why I am telling you all about myself." "I'll remember," said Bowen. "I'm glad you're a D.S.O., though," she went on, half to herself. "That's sure to interest them, and it's nice to think you're more than a major. Miss Wangle and Mrs. Mosscrop Smythe are most worldly minded. Of course, it would have been nicer had you been a field marshal, but I suppose you couldn't be promoted from a major to a field marshal in the course of a few days, could you?" "Well, it's not usual," he confessed. When the meal was over, Bowen looked at his watch. "I'm afraid it's too late for a show. It's 10:15. "A 10:15!" cried Patricia. "How the time has flown! I shall have to be going home." He noticed preparations for a move at the Wangle table. "Oh, please don't hurry. Let's go upstairs and sit and smoke for a little time." "Do you think I ought?" enquired Patricia critically, her head on one side. "Well," replied Bowen, "I think that you might safely do so, as we are engaged." And that settled it. They went upstairs, and it was 11:15 before Patricia finally decided that she must make a move. "Do you know," she said as she rose, "I'm afraid I've enjoyed this most awfully. But, oh, tomorrow morning. Shall you be tired? He inquired. Tired? She queried. I shall be hot with shame. I shall not dare to look at myself in the glass. I shall give myself a most awful time. For days I shall live in torture. You see, I'm excited now, and you seem so nice, and you've been so awfully kind. But when I get alone, then I shall start wondering what was in your mind, what you've been thinking of me, and oh, it will be awful. No, I'll come with you while you get your hat. I daren't be left alone. It might come on then, and I should probably bolt. Of course, I shall have to ask you to see me home, if you will, because I'm your fiancé, he smiled. Uh-huh, she nodded. Both were silent as they sped along westward in the taxi, neither seeming to wish to break the spell. Thinking? Inquired Bowen at length, as they passed the Marble Arch. I was thinking how perfectly sweet you've been, replied Patricia gravely. You've understood everything, and you see I was so much at your mercy. Shall I tell you what I was thinking? Please do. It sounds horribly sentimental. Never mind, he replied. Well, I was thinking that your mother would like to know that you had done what you have done tonight. And now, please, tell me how much my dinner was. Your dinner? Yes, please. She emphasized the please. You insist? And then Patricia did a strange thing. She placed her hand upon Bowen's and pressed it. Please go on understanding, she said, and he told her how much the dinner was and took the money from her. May I pay for the taxi? He inquired comically. For a moment she paused, and then replied, Yes, I think you may do that, and now here we are, as the taxi drew up. And thank you very much indeed, and good-bye. They were standing on the pavement outside Galvin House. Good-bye, he inquired. Do you really mean it? Yes, please. Again she emphasized the please. Patricia, he said in a serious tone, as the door flew open and Gustave appeared silhouetted against the light. Don't you think that sometimes we ought to think of the other fellow? I shall always think of the other fellow. And with a pressure of the hand, Patricia ran up the steps and disappeared into the hall, the door closing behind her. Bowen turned slowly and re-entered the taxi. Where to, sir? inquired the man. Ah, to hell! Burst out Bowen savagely. Yes, sir, but what about my petrol? Your petrol? Oh, I see. Bowen laughed. Well, the Quadrant then. In the hall, Patricia hesitated. Should she go into the lounge, where she was sure Galvin House would be gathered in full force, or should she go straight to bed? Miss Wangle decided the matter by appearing at the door of the lounge. Oh, here you are, Miss Brent. We thought you had eloped. Wasn't it strange we should see you tonight? Lisped Mrs. Mosscrop Smythe, who had followed Miss Wangle. Patricia surveyed Mrs. Mosscrop Smythe with calculating calmness. If two people go to the same grill room at the same time on the same evening, it would be strange if they did not see each other. Don't you think so, Miss Wangle? Did you say you were going there? Lisped Mrs. Mosscrop Smythe, coming to Miss Wangle's assistance. We forgot. Oh, do come in, Miss Brent. It was Mrs. Grask Morton who spoke. Patricia entered the lounge and found, as she had anticipated, the whole establishment collected. Not one was missing. Even Gustave fluttered about from place to place, showing an unwonted desire to tidy up. Patricia was conscious that her advent had interrupted a conversation of absorbing interest, furthermore that she herself had been the subject of that conversation. Miss Wangle has been telling us all about your fiancé. It was Miss Sikkum who spoke. Fancy your saying he was a major when he's a staff lieutenant-colonel. Oh, replied Patricia nonchalantly, as she pulled off her gloves. They've been altering him. They always do that in the army. You get engaged to a captain, and you find you have to marry a general. It's so stupid. It's like buying a kitten and getting a kangaroo pup sent home. But aren't you pleased? Enquired Mrs. Grask Morton, at a loss to understand Patricia's mood. No, snapped Patricia, who was already feeling the reaction. It's like being engaged to a chameleon or a quick-change artist. They've made him an R.S.O. as well. Under her lashes Patricia saw, with keen appreciation, the quick glances that were exchanged. You mean a D.S.O., Distinguished Service Order," explained Mr. Bolton.